Hello, I'm Dapper Dan Gavazden, and I own every issue of Amazing Spider-Man, including the annuals, which definitely count.
And I'm mischievous Mark Ginocchio, and I too own every issue of Amazing Spider-Man, including the annuals, even though, Dan, the annuals, they still don't count.
Well, welcome everybody to the Amazing Spider Talk, the show where two fans and collectors uncover the strange, fun, and fascinating history of the Spider-Man comic universe. Thanks for joining us for this special review episode of the Amazing Spider Talk.
Today on the show, Dan and I are going to be discussing Amazing Spider-Man Volume 5, number 62, legacy number 863, titled Wag the Gog. Waka Waka. Amazing Spider-Man number 62 was written by Nick Spencer, with art by Patrick Gleason, colors by Edgar Delgado, and letters by VC's Joe Caramagna, and a cover by Patrick Gleason and Edgar Delgado. This issue was first released on March 24th, 2021. Dan, it's issue 2 of the new suit era. Why don't we get right into it?
Mark, I think my kind of first real thought about this and kind of reflecting on the past, not just 3, but maybe 5 or 6 issues is I'm enjoying this book getting into a groove of not being a big event. It feels like it's a regular check-in in the Spider-Man's world with supporting cast characters doing their things. You know, I don't know that I felt like this issue was like a home run, but there's a cover which accurately depicts things that are going on inside of it that are memorable. Like I'll look at that cover and I'll go, "Oh yes, right, that was the issue where Gog got really big and tore his way through the city." And I know that seems like faint praise, but for a book that's kind of been all over the place, I do feel like we're settling into a bit of a groove here. Like this feels like a normal run of Spider-Man that I would have expected from Nick Spencer.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that, this is probably more reflective of what we were getting the first 6 months or so of the Spencer run before, we had whatever random event du jour kind of interjecting itself into the book. And then frankly, even Spencer's own events being interjected into the book. This is we're kind of calling back obviously to a bunch of storylines from earlier in the run here, but you're right. I mean, this is kind of like that, that trademark connecting thread Spider-Man stuff that, I mean, not only would I expect that from Spencer, but I just kind of expect it from this book, period. Like this is where the book to me has always been at the best, when it's kind of grounded yet still moving forward and having fun within its own universe without getting too ahead of itself, if that makes sense. I'm not trying to advocate for complacency, but there's something kind of lovely and familiar about Spider-Man having a fun team up and taking on street level goons a la Kingpin and Tombstone and Hammerhead and all of the characters that are coming up in this run supposedly. So I enjoyed it. It's not groundbreaking or revolutionary, and there are some general issues that we're going to get into that are kind of some demerits on the story, but overall I enjoyed reading this comic. There was nothing to be like, why am I reading this book still? I mean, this is kind of the Spider-Man that I'm generally here for.
Yeah, and I think kind of supplementing that is just the incredible artistry from Patrick Gleason. There is beautiful looking art, and then there's just great storytelling that goes along with art, and I think that's the true hallmark of a strong comic book artist. And I think you and I are pretty good about pointing this out when we experience it. I think back to that Mark Bagley issue that kicked off what was the story before Last Remains?
The Sins Rising.
Yeah.
There we go.
That first issue with the Sin Eater, which had really beautiful storytelling in how its panels were constructed. And I think, Gleason, for all of his kind of big bombast, and I'll say it, this issue's art is some of the most indulgent comic book art I've ever seen. I mean, there is not a quiet panel in the mix. I mean, that's not true because we do get some really grounded stuff with the bugle later on. But
Right.
this opening is so. I mean, there are really radical experiments in style that are going on here. I mean, even just from the first panel where you've got like Kingpin's eyes just like sunken into his face in shadow that look almost like sunglasses. I mean, it's a unique visual image and it doesn't let up. But I don't think it does so at the sake of storytelling. In many ways, it enhances the storytelling, and I think if anything, this issue, as much as we talk about story from Spencer, I think Gleason takes an issue that would have been otherwise, I think, really unremarkable. And that's not like a bad thing. It's a really solid issue. But he injects a life into it that makes it, stand on its own. There are images in this that, I don't know if they're seared into my memory, but really exciting comic book art. And good storytelling. And I think it's worth promote shouting this, that this is a true collaborative storyteller in Gleason that we have here.
Yeah, and it's funny. Like, I mean, you talk about kind of the bombast and the indulgence of the art in a good way here. What kind of surprised me about it, and I shouldn't say surprised because Gleason is an excellent artist, but frankly, a lot of the earlier work related to the elements of this arc were done by Ryan Ottley, and I honestly thought it was some of Ottley's best work on the book during his run here. And frankly, I like, and this is not to throw shade at Ottley. I thought he's great, but like this book, Gleason's art here made me not miss Otley. I kind of felt that even some of the really strong stuff that Gleason had been doing, he's been doing a lot of strong stuff on this book. Like the Otley Spencer stuff seemed to be kind of where the book was at its peak. This book kind of put to rest any fears about just how visually dynamic it could be with Gleason kind of running the show, so to speak. So, like you said, everything else is more or less. I agree with what you were saying in terms of what an artist of Gleason's caliber can do for the storytelling element. Why don't we talk a little bit about some of the specific plot beats here? Because I mean, it's kind of a mixed bag. There's some fun things that happen here, but also some stuff that, either feels like a missed opportunity or a little unearned, and we can kind of get into the nitty gritty of that.
Well, sure. I mean, I'll make the bridge in talking about the art to the kind of opening of the book, which is, Kingpin, Spider-Man racing to Boomerang and Gog's side. I'm not quite sure how he knows, the details of that. And Kingpin is communicating with Bullseye, like we saw at the end of the previous issue. And, talking about the art, Kingpin calls take the shot on Gog. And we've got this full page of Spider-Man silhouetted against a building. And there's a graphite style drawing of the Kingpin and these big expressive red letters of the shot and this graffiti-like coloring. It's really a striking page to sell the drama of I guess what we presume is the death of Gog, but is ultimately Gog's collar being shot off. And, obviously triggering Gog to unleash his shape-shifting powers, which we're now aware of. And again, it's the art here. This is just whatever story. I don't really understand Kingpin's plan here. It doesn't make much sense to me. If his goal was to piss off Boomerang, I'm not quite sure why it needed to take this particular form. It seems quite indirect.
Well, let's be. I don't mean to cut you off here.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Let's be honest. Let's be honest here. This is sound the Kindred alarm or the Mephisto alarm, but I mean this is frankly a direct callback to the aftermath of. Was it Back in Black when before One More Day, frankly, when the Kingpin had the assassin, was supposed to go after Peter, but it took out Aunt May. I mean, this is all to me. This all seems to be kind of a direct callback to that, which we kind of seem to be moving in that direction and other storyline elements as well. Like we're going head on into One More Day here. So whether this is truly a logical move that someone with the acumen of Kingpin would make, I don't know. But for if the goal of this story is to kind of bring back all of the JMS era, I think mission accomplished, right?
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, it's hard to like see a sniper and Kingpin and not make that connection in the pages of a Spider-Man comic. To what point that's trying to make, I'm unclear. But you're right. The analog is set up.
Yeah,
for
exactly.
sure. Yeah. So we get this like big kind of Gog action scene where they're trying to get the collar back on him. And I thought this was all great fun, especially because the layouts are so great. You've got, Gog's image reflected in Spider-Man's eyes. You've got like these diagonal cuts into the page. There's a moment where Boomerang like hurls the collar into the stratosphere, and Spider-Man seems to be like bending all of space to catch it. And to me, it was a great showcase of the like elasticity, not just of his webbing, but of like his body. He's like all contorted out of all, normal means to grab this boomerang in the collar and reassemble it before throwing it back on Gog, who is currently upside down in the panel and King Konging his way up the side of a building. This is, Gleason just having a ton of fun, and, it's what comics can do. And I thought it was really exciting if I wasn't entirely hooked narratively, by this.
Right. I mean, obviously kind of the affection and emotional attachment to Gog certainly from Spider-Man / Peter's standpoint, those threads truly haven't been connected here through this narrative. I mean, this is the first we've heard of Gog since, the reboot of the series post-COVID, or not post-COVID, but post-COVID break last year. But like even beyond that, like for me, as much fun as this whole sequence is, to me, like it kind of got solved a little too cleanly and easily. You know what I mean? Like, we're trying to set this up where, whatever you want to say about Kingpin's motivations and logic here, it's to give a sense of loss and stakes. And it's like, not only does the deadliest assassin in Marvel Comics miss the shot, but like it's like, okay, well, he got the collar off, which is a problem, but we solved that within a few pages too. You know what I mean? Does that kind of track with you as well? I mean, did you feel like this was kind of cleaned up a little too quickly?
Well, I mean, the bullseye thing is interesting because like it was my understanding that he intended to hit the collar.
Okay.
But maybe not. I mean,
that would make sense then, because he doesn't miss. That's the whole point.
Right. But at the same time, it's like Bullseye is a cold killer. Like it does seem weird to utilize that character just to like knock off the collar from this monster. Right. I'm not exactly, again, that gets to the point I was saying earlier, which is like, I don't really fully understand Kingpin's play here. Like he knows that Boomerang cares about Gog, so he's going to let Gog loose on New York and potentially destroy a bunch of Manhattan buildings. Like, is he looking to follow up on this and sue them for destruction? Is he looking to take the online fame that Gog is slowly accruing and turn it sour by making him a public menace? That does not really seem to be a part of it here, although that seems to be the more direct thing you could get out of taking these actions instead of just like angering Boomerang so Boomerang will come at Kingpin.
Right.
To me, that's just like it's so circuitous. But fine. But you're right. There is no really like thinking about like, hey, maybe it's irresponsible of us to have this creature, in our living in our home that can it gets its collar off, it can destroy it, and this becomes a responsibility, but also a like way that someone can extort us or manipulate us in some way. And should we be posting pictures? I think you and I were critical of Peter of this in the last issue, which is, would he really be okay with Boomerang taking pictures of Gog and blasting it all over the internet that he's living with an alien in his apartment.
Right.
I'm not entirely sure. But to your point about Spidey reminiscing about Gog, there's like a half page here as Spidey's falling with the now shrunken Gog, which I think has a really great payoff of him like crashing dramatically into the car to end the scene. I thought that was funny and clever. But none of that worked for me because we haven't seen Peter with Gog. And, you know, I know the book did not intend to be delayed several months because of COVID, but even without COVID, this would have been like a 9-month gap since the last time we'd even seen Gog or gotten accustomed to the idea that Gog was living with Peter. And it's a lot to ask us, I think, to invest in that relationship entirely. Although we had that big issue of investing in Gog, I care about Gog. I just don't know that I care about Peter and
Peter's
Gog.
relationship certainly is slippery here. It's not like as he was getting, murdered and resurrected by Kindred, he was, thinking in addition about MJ, like, oh, and my pet alien Gog, I miss him. What is he gonna think when he sees that I've been murdered 400 times consecutively?
What a cutaway to
Yeah, right.
the death of Spider-Man. But what about Gog?
What about Gog? So speaking of kind of sledgehammer of plot type developments, we have this other scene after the Gog scene with Randy and Robbie, which is, I mean, let's telegraph here. I mean, we know that we're getting kind of a gang war type story, and Tombstone, aka Lonnie Lincoln, is going to be central in it, and of course Tombstone has a relationship with Robbie Robertson, and Randy is dating Janice Lincoln, Tombstone's daughter. So like, I mean, this is all clearly coming to some kind of a head, but to that point, like, Randy is kind of venting to Dad about this crackpot relationship he's in, and Robbie, not knowing the details, of course, is like, I think a little spice and opposites is a good thing. And I'm like, really? I mean, like, Robbie is, to me, Robbie has long been the voice of reason and stability in this book. And not that I expected him to necessarily be like, you need to dump this girl, but like, it's such a convenient plot development that Robbie would, give his blessing to his son to keep pursuing a relationship with a woman that he's clearly at odds with, because the woman happens to be the daughter of Robbie's mortal enemy. I mean, again, the convenience factor is just way too high here.
I'm okay with the convenience factor. It's that kind of classic, like, look who's coming to dinner kind of thing.
Yeah, I know.
Like, I'm okay with that. It's a kind of like I mean,
I always call it sitcom-y when they do it in this book. It feels very, like Three's Company sitcom-y on me,
I'm okay with it because, like, at its essence, like, these comics are soap operas, and to me, like, that's a fun setup that I want to see pay off, and I'm here for the dramatic irony of Randy leaving her, if not for Robbie's intervention. Like, to me, that's the kind of like clever thing that is fun to see play out. We know it's going to happen. Like, we're going to get to this, so you might as well, like, dig the knife in a little bit deeper while you're there. I was okay with that, and also, like, Robbie's the same guy that, like, let's be honest, knows that Peter Parker is Spider-Man and hasn't said anything about it for several decades. Like, the guy is not without, like, shaking up the order of things, but, or maybe he's just been very displeased with Randy's dating history, given, everything that happened with Nora Winters, as will eventually play out in this scene when Jonah re-enters the picture here, ranting and raving about the success of Threats and Menaces.
Which is funny. I mean, like, obviously Jonah is there to gloat, but also he there to get Robbie's approval, and Robbie, being the kind of, the principled person that he is, isn't giving it, which is a funny development for sure, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's 100% what this is. It's it's seeking approval that's masked in bravado, which I think has always been the relationship between Jonah and Robbie. I think Jonah knows that Robbie is really the only the true heart and soul of the Daily Bugle, um, and and does keep Jonah in check. And while I think Jonah is doing something more positive than he has in the past with not making up lies about Spider-Man, he is engaging in the same kind of like cheap, meritless journalism that he kind of has been known for in like editorial pages, if you will. I mean, this guy can operate on the same time as the guy from the I Cover the Waterfront of thing, but he is much more of the like sensationalist. And I think this is neat to see these two characters kind of coming at a head from in terms of ethics. Like we've got Jonah truly unhinged to just do his most sensationalist stuff ever, even if it may be on the side of our protagonist. And Robbie with the dying, how much is he willing to ride the dying beast of ethics into his journalistic and financial grave? And it's where newspapers find themselves today. And I think it's interesting to see it reflected in these two characters.
100%, definitely. Leaving that scene, we get the resolution to the Gog, which is that Boomerang and Spider-Man agree to leave him with MJ. And okay, so here's like one of my issues, I guess, which is like, again, it's not entirely clear how much Boomerang knows about Spidey's identity here. But it's like, why? I don't know. Like, it seems funny to me that, like, Boomerang, who seems particularly attached to Gog here, would just be so okay with him being with MJ. I know MJ dates Peter, but, am I making sense here? It's one of these, like, little links where it's like, I don't, we're not led to believe that Boomerang actually knows that Peter is Spider-Man, but, like, when stuff like this happens, how does he not figure it out, or how does the writing, the creative team expect us as the readers not to be like, oh, come on, you know what I mean? Like this is suspension of disbelief to a whole new level in terms of who understands what, no matter how much of an airhead Fred Myers is. Like,
right. What is MJ doing hanging out in the apartment without Peter? Like, where is Peter in all of this?
Right.
Like that would be the first question I would ask. Yeah.
It just again, like I know we gotta like, yeah, it's comics, it's a soap opera, like you were saying, but like there's just too many loose ends here to be like, and I'm not saying like we need to have this big serious reveal to Boomerang. In fact, I'd prefer if we didn't. Like I like how many people do really truly need to know that Peter is Spider-Man? Like it's getting to like the pre Brand New Day era levels again in terms of that, and I don't generally like that. So it's like I'm not looking for that, but at the same token, it's just, we're taking these leaps of faith and narratives here, and I don't know if it just seems to kind of insulting to just expect the readers to totally be like, yeah, okay, that's cool. I'm not going to connect that thread here.
I'm curious, do you think that by the end of this whole Fred Myers thing, which, obviously I think is going to be a character that runs through most of Nick Spencer's run, if not at least have like a major arc that concludes in it, do you see this building towards a reveal of Peter's identity to Boomerang? I mean, they're roommates. There is a lot of dramatic potential there, but I don't know that it's been really milked for that. So like my answer would be no, I don't think it is, but I'm curious to hear what you think.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, I don't think it has either. I think like the way it's been built to this point is that, we're kind of operating under the assumption, frankly, that Boomerang is too stupid to know. And I think like if they kept operating on that, and then like in one of the final resolutions to this arc, we find out that Boomerang actually has known the whole time, I feel like that would be a kind of a fun reveal in that vein. But like that requires us to not be so ridiculous about the connections here, and to me, like this kind of undercuts um, that kind of potential reversal by Spencer, in terms of who knows what. Like, it's one thing when Boomerang is at a bar of villains with Peter, and Peter's knowledge of Spider-Man kind of saves the day. I think that's kind of fun. But when it's like, now like Peter's personal life is intersecting with Boomerang and Spider-Man's professional life, if you want to call it that, I don't know. It just seems like it's a little too cute, and whatever the resolution is, I'm not sure if I'm going to be entirely satisfied by it. Like I don't know if I need to have this dramatic scene of Peter taking off his mask to Boomerang. Like I just don't see what the payoff with that would be.
I do want to say about Gleason's art, the one character out of costume that really hasn't connected with me in his stuff is his MJ. I mean, if I can just be so crass, I would say like his MJ is HAWT hot. Like she is an attractively drawn character, but his character has none of that kind of like Romita flair that I think really defines the MJ character. The kind of broad face. She just looks like kind of like a hot chick with red hair. And I appreciate the things like the stylistic design that's on her jeans and these various things. But like, if you were to show me this character, I wouldn't immediately jump to MJ. And so like, I think it's missing some of the like, whether it's the dimples or whatever it is, like something iconographic about MJ that makes her stand apart is absent from his design of the character. And, I think about like Otley's MJ, who is like so Romita, like really defined by that Romita look. I would love to see this character kind of come back a little bit more to the middle ground. She's just kind of nebulous to me in this drawing.
Yeah, I see what you're saying there. It's kind of, I think Kamikoli used to really punch up the hotness of MJ a bit, and it can, I don't know if we need to go quite that far with it. You know what I mean? Like it's at the end of the day, this is still a character that was based on Anne Margaret,
well, Anne Margaret is one of the hottest people to ever exist. I'm
True.
Okay, I'm okay with.
Yeah, no, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
I'm okay with her being hot. I just like it doesn't like in terms of like iconic iconography, like that character doesn't look like MJ to me.
Right.
Okay. And it's not because of her attractiveness. It's just like that. It's just like there are not the defining characteristics other than maybe just having red hair that
Right.
that I look at it and go, that looks like MJ. Like Peter could look like any white dude with short brown hair, but I think we can all identify a drawing of like Peter Parker when we see it. Like when I think Peter Parker, I think about like Ron Friends is particularly awkward and lanky looking Peter Parker as like the most Peter Parker the character ever got drawn, other than maybe
Right.
Steve Ditko. And then
Ditko,
there's like
yeah.
a spectrum where like I think Bagley probably sits in the dead center, for most of it, between like Ramita and Friends and Ditko. To me, this MJ just is like, it's just kind of divorced from the character.
Right. Right. So, upon the resolution of this, we kind of set up the Boomerang and Kingpin feud, heating up another notch. And, Boomerang, I mean, what else can you say? Spencer has been writing Boomerang fantastically, going all the way back to Superior Foes, like there's no question about it. This is some fun stuff. I mean, I never really contemplated reading Amazing Spider-Man and finding myself cheering the hardest for Boomerang, but that's where we're at. Do we want to talk a little bit about, so this Kingpin stuff kind of evolves some more. I mean, we I guess we get a little more insight to his plan, if you call it that. But we also, sound the Kindred alarm again. We kind of get this, Kingpin talking smack to Kindred, like you spurned me, but I'm going to get my way. I don't know, man. This just seems like a lot to like get Kingpin to bring back, to get someone to bring back Vanessa. I don't know, man. Like,
I'll tell your wife
this is
that
super convoluted.
I would tell your wife that you draw the line at convolution to bringing her back from the dead. Um, you know,
I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's like, I mean, how many times has Kingpin and like I said, we've dealt with this before with Kingpin needing to get Vanessa back, whether she's alive or dead. This just seems like, this is not one of his most, I think, clear and concise plans to that end, and I also don't quite get like why Kingpin would be going to such these lengths just because of what Kindred did. It's still one of the loosest ends in that whole dynamic that I don't feel has been effectively tied for me.
right? It's a little bit murky. Like I don't know if he needs Kindred still to pull this plan off, or if he's planning on circumventing him with the Lifeline tablets and things like that. I don't know how those things all fit together. You're right, but also like. Would it be the worst thing for people to let Kingpin get what he wants and bring Vanessa back? Like, wouldn't that just solve everyone's problems? This guy is clearly tormented by this, and he's taking it out on everybody else. Like, can he just retire? Like, just let him live his life with this undead woman. I've got no problems with that. Like,
just let
fine.
the sociopath have what he wants.
Right? Yeah. That'll be the end of it.
What could possibly go wrong, Dan?
I don't know. I mean, like, yeah, he's gonna get Vanessa back, and then he'll quit, right? Isn't that how it always works? No.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, there seemed to be a lot of opposition to giving a guy something that seems pretty non-destructive, but. Of course it couldn't be that simple. I'm sure it's going to open some portal to ending the universe if he were to try to pull this off. So
there always has to be a catch with that.
Right.
So of course, Kingpin 6, Tombstone on Fred here, but with the caveat, and Dan, we talked a little bit about this in our pre-show, the caveat of Peter Parker is off limits, and. Do we know why that's the case? Because I don't. And, maybe an editor's note would have worked here or something. But, like, I know Spider-Man was off limits for a while, but why Peter Parker? And we're pretty sure that Kingpin doesn't know that Peter is Spider-Man, right?
Right. The only instance where that may have been true was in Family Business, but Kingpin's memory was fried by the end of that story. So, in the present time, yeah, he doesn't know. Maybe he's just really cares about not hurting the roommate of Boomerang, but I don't quite know why that is. And it's spelled out. Like, I don't think I would have questioned it if it wasn't spelled out. And that's why I'm curious about it.
Right. Well, you can't say it's because it's not hurting the roommate because,
frankly,
Lonnie Lincoln is then saying, well, I can't hurt Peter, but he didn't say anything about the other one.
Right.
Who, of course, is, Randy and his nemesis's kid. So, like Tombstone is going over there and you kind of feel the mortal danger for Randy there, which I appreciated the stakes of that. And I kind of knew what was coming next, but still, like, it was a good setup to get there because it's like, oh no, Randy's in trouble. But like, I don't know. Again, the logic here is very loosely connected, and that's a little disappointing because like the stakes don't work there unless we know clearly why Kingpin says Peter is a no-no. Like it's either all or nothing. If it's just I don't want to mess with anyone but Boomerang. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. So Robbie is also on the case because they've got like media on it. They're following like a Lonnie or a Janice Lincoln, and he begins to recognize that they're going to somewhere familiar, an apartment that he's aware of. And then there's this like beautifully constructed reveal. Like I think the visual pacing of this is excellent. As you see like. Randy like looking right out at the reader and Janice pulling her mask off, and then you get this full splash page of the two in this beautiful drawing kissing on the rooftop as everybody is shocked that these two families' lives are going to intersect with each other again.
It is Montagues and Capulets here, Dan.
Right. I'm curious to see how this played for people that like aren't aware of, I think, a fairly obscure Spider-Man story from Spectacular Spider-Man, 3 decades ago?
Right, right.
This is another kind of point where an editor's note or some kind of thing would be like, go read these issues. Like that might
Right.
fill you in on why this has significance.
Go put money in Jerry Conway's pockets.
Right. I mean, for us, I would say like that reveal really worked for me. Like, I mean, it would have worked even more if I didn't know that these two were together in some way, or there was some like it wasn't so obviously telegraphed that they were going to get back together. Or if that was like a big. I figured they were off and on for a while now, so like there wasn't a narrative surprise, but it was a joyful surprise. One, to see the beautiful art and the way it was laid out, and two, just to see Lonnie and Robbie, react to it. I think there's a certain pleasure in that. But I do think it would have been really cool to in an alternate universe where we don't know who Randy is dating for even longer. And because I don't think much was done with that initially, like keep it a secret for a long time, and then have this be the reveal that he's been dating, Janice. I think that would have been a really cool moment for the reader, for Lonnie and Robbie, and but obviously I think it still works the way that it is.
Right. You have any other thoughts about this issue that we haven't hit upon?
Yeah, in terms of the ongoing story, I did find this issue disappointing in that we got this brand new costume last issue, and I think it still looks really cool here, but I don't think this story takes advantage of the costume in any interesting way. I mean, especially if this costume is going to be short-lived, I would want every issue to utilize it in some interesting way, and I felt like last issue we had this great setup to this...
Excuse me.
Last issue, we had this great setup to this story about like how this costume could be used and Jonah, and all of that seems to be jettisoned for this issue. And this issue is, fairly packed to the gills with I wouldn't say it's like supercharged with content, but I like the way it was paced. So I don't know what I would change, but it did seem weird to me that seemed to be the thrust of the story, is this new, relationship for Peter. And it's just not touched on at all here.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, like, we introduced this new plot device and then, seemingly abandoned it. I mean, I'm sure we'll go back to it, but, it would have been nice to kind of ride that development all the way through. But yeah, they clearly wanted to work other things in, more so. And, when you're dealing with 22 pages now, it's like, you get what you get.
Right.
We ran out of room, ran out of time, kids. Sorry.
It's the kind of thing where the next issue could open with like Jonah at a computer and he's been like watching the events of these issues the whole time. It just didn't feel need to comment on it. And I would be like, okay, fine. It doesn't bother me that much, but it is weird to like spend so much time setting that up last issue and then not deliver on that in some way. These books are just, to quote Dan Slott's thing, which is like every page is packed with content. I think Spencer is giving us our money's worth at the very least. Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. So, do you want to give a grade on this?
Yeah, sure. I think this one is a B- for me.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. It's probably a lower end of B- for me, but it's a B-. This was fun. It just had its issues, but that's okay.
It was fun and not like super memorable, but like I'll take fun and not memorable.
Absolutely,
for like in between issues. Spider-Man and most comic runs are built on the back of fun but not memorable. So that's fairly okay with me.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, Dan, let's take it home. So it is, of course, that time for all of the good things to come to an end. In this case, it is our show that is coming to an end. So we want to say thank you to you, the listeners and viewers, for tuning in to this episode of The Amazing Spider Talk.
Yeah, this episode was edited by Rick Coast with production support from Andy Myers. Our artwork comes handcrafted by artists Ron Friend, Sal Buscema, and Ray Sumser, and our theme songs were produced by Rylan Bojack, Tony Thaxton, and Spider Madge. This episode was originally released on Patreon as a live stream hangout with us back when the comic was first released. So, if you'd like to help support our show's continued existence and these very reviews while joining us on the live stream, why not head on over to our Patreon and sign up?
Also, Dan, we've got our 300th episode approaching fast, so cue the 300th episode alarm. This probably sounds like the Kindred alarm. So if you, the listener at home, want to join us for that episode, why not give us a ring at 9 Red Goblin and leave us a voicemail about your memories of the show. Or just send us an audio file to amazingspidertalk@gmail.com. If you leave your name and where you're calling from, we'll play it on our show as we look back on our last 100 episodes.
So, Mark, until your new dog Parker grows to gargantuan size and destroys large sections of Manhattan, what's our motto?
That is a terrifying thought, Dan. Our motto, of course, is with great podcasts, there must also come the amazing Spider Talk.
Two men who know the angles, uncover and untangle all the questions and the webs left out to tangle. Be in 1962, last Wednesday's afternoon, they'll bend your ears with reckless self-abandon. The amazing